Chapter 35. The main law of life. The will of God. Treatment for offenders. So far, we have learned that on this planet, namely among the mountain dwellers, there are no borders as far as personal properties are concerned, and that the expression on the face of a human being is sufficient testimony for the Saturnites that the Great Spirit has given him the indisputable right to take possession of such properties anywhere on the planet which suits his needs. We shall now return to our family, which was separated from the main family under the leadership of a new patriarch. We have seen how the new temple was built, and we have heard about the possibility of how such blessed seeds grow with miraculous speed from the soil of this planet. And we have also seen how the Saturnites build or grow other buildings. This completes the description of the new development of their property. We shall now describe what you on earth would call a political constitution. What does a political constitution consist of when it comes to such a family? On Saturn, a political constitution is very short and contains only a few words. The foundation of this constitution consists of only one main law, namely, that not one member of any family community is permitted to do anything unless the patriarch communicates to him the will of the Great Spirit. Neither will any community member do anything unless he is told. Once he has been told the will of the Great Spirit by the patriarch, he cannot begin the work until he has given thanks to the Great Spirit for proclaiming his will. After giving thanks, he will also beseech the Great Spirit that the work he is undertaking will succeed in a rightful and proper manner. That is the main foundation of the entire political constitution of the Saturnites. Every human being acts in accordance with this principle and does not worry about anything else. The Saturnites care only how they can properly thank the Great Spirit after they have completed their work. You can believe that this short sentence contains everything imaginable. Whosoever acts in accordance with my will acts properly at all times. Therefore, there are no additional interpretations about this brief political law, which any child can commit to memory after it has been repeated 3 times. And this short law has no penal or criminal codex at its side as a political taskmaster, except for the expression, "I act in accordance with the cognizable will of the Great Spirit." This expression is for every human being on Saturn the most powerful documented evidence of lawful conduct, which cannot be influenced by anything else. Should it, however, occur that at times, when someone from the depths, note 1, people from the plains and valleys, comes to these mountain dwellers and deals with these people to his own advantage, without having first discussed the matter with the eldest member of a family, Then the eldest, or the next in line, goes immediately to this person and asks him, "In whose will are you doing this?" Should his reply be, "It is done in the will of the Great Spirit," then he will not be interfered with in his undertakings. But should the answer be, "In order for me to profit, this was absolutely necessary," then the eldest will give him the following lecture. "Listen, my brother, in the Great Spirit. How is it possible that you have more than is necessary, which lies only in the will of the Great Spirit? Do you have an additional need, which is apart or separate from the need in accordance with the will of the Great Spirit? Therefore, I advise you as a true brother in the Great Spirit to cease this work immediately, so that you do not become unfortunate while in the midst of carrying out your intentions. Should you be destitute and homeless, look to our house, for there is enough room to accommodate hundreds like you. If you did this deed because of a hidden urge of selfishness, then fall instantly upon your countenance and implore the Great Spirit earnestly and remorsefully that he may spare you from a proper punishment. The Great Spirit is exceedingly benevolent to the good, but extremely strict and just towards those who are contrary to his holy will, which is above all. Following such an address, the foreigner who did not have the authority to commit these deeds will immediately abandon his intentions. Should he refuse, then the elder will reply, "Do as you please as far as I am concerned, and may it be granted to you for all times of times, that your sins do not become greater in the eyes of the Great Spirit. But be on guard that your punishment does not strike you in the open field." Note 1. When no one else is around. Upon which the elder offers his hand and leaves, and lets him continue with his work. When the elder arrives at his home, what does he do? You might be of the opinion that the elder will dispatch several members of his family, as is the custom on earth, with ropes and spears to take the offender into custody and take him home to dispense the proper punishment. That, of course, is not the case among the people of this planet, especially when it comes to the mountain dwellers. When such an occasion arises, the elder informs the members of his family as to the circumstances, and he requests that they all gather and beseech the Great Spirit, with the supplication that he may be charitable and merciful towards this brother, who has forsaken himself, and who has acted contrary to the will of the Great Spirit, and that the Great Spirit may return the offender to true cognizance, where a human being should have no other need than the sole will of the Great Spirit. After the family members have prayed in earnest for a certain period of time, the eldest collects himself in his heart and calls for the Spirit of Light, who is always ready to dispense the proper advice. The elder asks the Spirit to proclaim to him the will of the Great Spirit for the permanent welfare of the particular lost brother. Under those circumstances, the Spirit of Light never neglects to inform the elder as to what to do. Should the offender be a hardened, willful, and selfish person, then the elder is given the task of taking the foreigner into custody and leading him to the heights where the family dwelling is located. While there, the offender is given food and drink and is lectured in the cognizance of the only valid will of the Great Spirit, even if such a lecture lasts for 7 days. Then the offender is led into the temple, and there he promises the Great Spirit the greatest obedience from the bottom of his heart, and, consequently, never to take another step without the will of the Great Spirit. If such an offender converts when this is carried out, then after a prayer of thanksgiving, he is given a fair amount of different kinds of food supplies and is led by 3 people from the family to the place which he has indicated as his home. If it is a fact that they find his dwelling where he said it would be, this ends the entire procedure, except that he is again reminded by the 3, in a brotherly but serious manner, to abide by what he has promised. He is also admonished as to his gratitude towards the Great Spirit. Should it so happen that this stranger's dwelling is too far away from the mountains, or that he has no dwelling at all, which is mostly the case when it comes to the dwellers of the depths, in the first instance, he is released at the foot of the mountain, with a most urgent and extremely threatening admonition never to break his promise again. Then he is blessed and set free. But if he is a vagabond and, even though when he was in the mountains he said he had a home, has in fact no place of his own, despite such a circumstance, he is set free. A situation like this arises very rarely, and it is pointed out that he did not deceive the mountain dwellers, but only the one whose will they fulfill at all times. They also make him aware that this is the greatest of all evils which a man can commit, and that he is now on his own, and must manage to deal with the one who knows all his thoughts before he thinks them. They show the offender all the negative consequences which are based on experience, and leave him without blessing him. Whosoever has committed an offence against them is blessed in order for that person to return to the Great Spirit. But nobody dares to bless a person who has committed a sacrilege against the Great Spirit, unless it can clearly be seen that the offender is still in the grace of the Great Spirit. Should this be the case, he will be blessed. If, as happens frequently, the offender is soon thereafter punished by the Great Spirit, the Saturnists ask the Great Spirit for forgiveness on an almost daily basis for the sacrilege he has committed against the Great Spirit. Nobody dares to bless such a convict, unless they come into the knowledge spiritually, or in a natural manner, that the Great Spirit has begun to moderate the imposed punishment. That is the procedure with a hardened criminal. If the person is not a hardened criminal, then the elder dispatches 3 messengers laden with fruit to the offender, where he is still carrying out his work. As soon as they arrive, they instruct him to cease with his work immediately in the name of the Great Spirit, and they instruct him about the will of the Great Spirit, forgive him his deeds, and take him into their midst, and lead him down the mountain where he has stated that he lives. There they make him a gift of fruit, and say, "Brother, so that you do not commit any more sins against us in the future and, most importantly, against the most holy will of the Great Spirit, we let you go free, that you may visit us whenever you wish, and never more go empty-handed to your domicile. We have learned from the will of the Great Spirit why this has to be done. But should you ever dare to sin again as you have done now, then you will suffer the punishment of the Great Spirit once you take the first wrong step." Then they shake his hands, bless him, and admonish him to offer prayers of gratitude to the Great Spirit and return home. These are the entire judicial procedures in such proceedings on the part of the people on Saturn. In the next chapter, we shall pursue similar political constitutions and proceedings.